What I love about indie games is their freedom to get really crazy with their ideas. It's these crazy ideas that create truly one-of-a-kind experiences. A game that aligns with this is 2015's Undertale from single developer Toby Fox. This game is very special and there still to this day is nothing like it. Well, apart from one title. Toby is at it again with his second game Deltarune, which he has been releasing in chapters since 2018. With the launch of the Switch 2, chapters 3 and 4 released, so I played them all. But does Deltarune reach the heights of its critically acclaimed predecessor? What's up? How's it going, people? Welcome to Casual Gamer Reviews. If you enjoy this video, then please show your support by leaving a like and subscribe, or if you don't like it, then please leave a thumbs down and let me know how I can be better for you. It took me 16 hours to complete all 4 chapters of Deltarune, reviewed on Nintendo Switch 2. Deltarune, much like Undertale before it, takes a very original spin on a turn-based RPG. You can level up, unlock new skills, find gear to give attack and defense bonuses, get healing items, and so on. Does any of this matter though? No, not really. In fact, it is better to not attack enemies at all. You can defeat them simply through humor and wits through this game's act mechanic. Act is unique to the enemy you are facing and usually involves a choice between 2 or 3 options. These options can have varying outcomes that will affect the emotions or mental state of your opponent. You want to spark a result that causes them to become willing to join your side. A lot of these were hilarious and some of them were sad, but all of them were beautifully niche and authentic. Once an enemy has been satisfied through your acting, you can grant them mercy and recruit them back to your base. This will unlock funny interactions and dialogue paths and sometimes even shops. You can see a list of everyone recruited back at the hub, and this will also show you which ones there are still left to sign up. The opponent will not just roll over and let you tickle their brain though. Deltarune's other distinguishing factor in its combat is what you have to do when the enemy attacks. During this attacking sequence, you must guide a small heart between a flurry of items in a bullet storm fashion to avoid damage. I can't think of a single other game that does this outside of these 2 titles. What keeps this fresh is that each attacking sequence once again will be unique to the enemy you are fighting. At one point I was fighting enemies shaped like needles and they would be throwing medical crosses at me. Earlier in the game I would be fighting card suit based enemies and they would be flinging diamonds or clubs at me. Sometimes the enemy themselves can breach the box where the combat takes place and you must avoid their whole character model. Sometimes enemies will bend the parameters of the box too, so the sequence continues in an entirely different space. No 2 fights are the same. Deltarune is remarkable at keeping you engaged and on your toes. Where the gameplay comes to a pristine peak is with the boss battles. This will incorporate all of what I've just mentioned but will always bring something new to the table. Each chapter comes to a crescendo to end on a boss fight and I thought every single one was fantastic. One fight had a sequence that was like Mike Tyson's Punch-Out. One had sequences that would blend between a quiz, Guitar Hero and Duck Hunt. I won't go into any more details as to keep the surprises for you to experience, but trust me, each one will leave you with a big smile. One of the main differences between Deltarune and Undertale's gameplay is that you are no longer running as a solo dude. Deltarune is very much a team RPG game and you are always in a party of up to 3 individuals. These are not always the same people, but for the most part will be your new best friend Susie and mysterious monster Ralsei. This group isn't just relevant for story purposes, but it helps with synergy during combat as each act move can combo with one or both of your party members for greater effect. I have been speaking a lot about the act mechanic, but you can very well just attack and kill enemies too if you prefer. As I said before, you do discover weapons and armor that will increase your attack, magic and defense, so there isn't really anything stopping you from gearing up and going on a slaying spree. I personally would recommend against this simply because of all the creativity you will miss, but the option is still yours to make. Outside of the combat and RPG tangential activities, there were also puzzles to solve. None of these were particularly challenging and didn't stump me for long, but each one of them felt intuitive and a nice addition to have rather than a hindrance. Some of them were timing puzzles and some of them were movement puzzles, and they always felt like they belonged within the environment. Visually, Deltarune follows in the footsteps of Undertale for the most part. It is a pixel art game in a classic 4:3 aspect ratio with dynamic borders for 16:9 viewing. These borders change with the environment and are often beautifully vibrant. That didn't just apply to the borders though, as each level introduces a new area and each of these were incredibly impressive to look at. I cannot make this point without talking about Chapter 2's world. It is set in a cyber city and some of the visuals here made me verbally gasp. Whoever thinks that pixel games can't be gorgeous, then take a look at this. As for the character designs, the protagonist Chris takes on a very similar resemblance of the model used in Undertale, which is to say they are meaningfully bland. The other characters take the mantle of various interesting monster designs, but once again the spotlight is on the boss characters. All four that I faced were visually stimulating, with one even being in a 3D art style, which was an unexpected surprise. It's not just the boss designs themselves, but the animations and transformations that each of them undergo. It really gives them life and makes them memorable. I will never forget my tense battle with the Queen while she just kicked back and enjoyed a cocktail. Deltarune has no voice dialogue and uses subtitles with the classic speaking sound of old RPGs, that audio bite that sounds like someone is mumbling to simulate conversation. This is something that players of Undertale will be very familiar with, and whilst I would obviously prefer voice acting, it is fairly unreasonable to expect that from a single developer, and if I'm being really honest, the game more than compensates for it in other areas. The music on the other hand is phenomenal. All 4 chapters OST are available on streaming platforms, so check them out for yourself. They are all composed by Toby Fox, but there are also some credited contributors, one of which is Celeste's composer Lena Raine. The music mostly falls into electronic synth sounds, but sometimes this strays from the path to fit the situation. For example, tracks that are based on Susie implement guitar and drum beats, which I always loved. There were several times during my playthrough where I was bopping along to the soundtrack. My particular favourite was Guardian, which sees out Chapter 4 as this was a truly epic piece of music. I give an honourable mention to A Cyber's World in Chapter 2, as this one was also a noticeable bop. This story very much follows on from Undertale, and there are many recurring characters, although it does seem to be in a slightly alternate reality. You play as human Chris, who is living in the monster world. Without going into spoiler territory, all of the characters you encountered in the first game play a slightly different role in Deltarune's reality, but you will notice them nonetheless. There are plenty of new characters too, most of which are Chris's school friends and monsters met in the Dark World. What is the Dark World? Well, that is what Deltarune's story predominantly revolves around. There is a light world where Chris and their friends usually inhabit, and then a dark world where they travel to and meet Ralsei for their quest. The Dark World is a kind of mirror world that has fallen to an evil entity called the Night. When Chris, Susie and friends enter the Dark World, they go through this transformation which makes them into heroes of legend. This is a cool transformation and provides the wrapper for a classic hero-centric RPG story. I like this change from Undertale, where you mostly play as a human trying to stumble through to freedom. This more gamey take on an RPG is what I like, with the needle leaning towards fantasy and legend. The writing is really good and often hilarious, but also often vague. This game is intentionally vague as it wants to string you along and keep you invested in the story by showing you tiny slices of what is actually happening. That, coupled with interactions and experiences that make no sense, keep you guessing as to the true nature of the story. While I did find this really engaging, I did also find it frustrating at times, as this is an episodically released game and I hate leaving things unfinished. At the same time though, you've got me desperately waiting for chapters 5, 6 and 7, so kudos to you, Toby. There is actually a lot of hidden side content and Easter eggs if you want to search for them. Each chapter has secret interactions within the hometown with the characters that followed over from the previous game. There are also hidden items, and every chapter has a super boss that requires a lot of hoops to jump through to discover. I only fought one of these, and trust me, they are incredibly tough. Each chapter took me roughly 4 hours to complete, with a couple being a little bit less than this and a couple being a little bit more, but given all the stuff I'm sure that I missed on my first playthrough, I will definitely be going through again to try and find those interactions and defeat more secret bosses. Toby has said chapter 5 isn't until 2026, and who knows about chapters 6 and 7, so it's good to know there is some of this content to fill the wait with successive playthroughs and challenges. Deltarune takes what made Undertale so special and expands upon it in all the right ways. The combat is still entirely unique and engaging, and the writing and story continues to be hilarious, mysterious and outright gripping. The OST is fantastic and the title is littered with Easter eggs and side content. This game, focusing on a team rather than an individual, was the perfect choice to make this one feel fresh in its own right. The story is not yet finished, as there are still 3 chapters chapters to go, so I cannot give it a true final score, but as it stands, Deltarune chapters 1 to 4 gets a casual gamer score of 9 out of 10. Check out my channel for more reviews like the first Berserker Kazan and Despelote, which were both recently uploaded. If gaming discussions are more your speed, then check out my overview of the main summer gaming showcases, as well as my video on the biggest upcoming 2025 games. Let me know what you thought of Deltarune chapters 1 to 4 in the comments below, and for everything casual gamer, keep it here. Peace and love.